All right, welcome back to ABA Exam Review and the continuation of our BCBA task list series where we're continuing with G11, teaching verbal behavior. So this is kind of an extension of the other verbal behavior ideas we've discussed. And when we talk about verbal behavior, we're talking about the verbal operants that Skinner devised. These things include mand and tax and interverbals and echoics. And so for this particular task list item, we're going to talk about how we teach these to our clients because teaching communication is obviously a very important piece of what we do. As always, we're going to simplify this down as much as possible. And we're going to simplify it so you can learn it for your exam, and then you can go and apply it in practice. As always, check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. So, real quick recap of verbal behavior. When we think about verbal behavior, we're thinking about an interaction between a speaker and a listener. So, all verbal interactions, you have a speaker and a listener. When the listener speaks, they become the speaker, and vice versa. And it's always driven by function. The most important piece about verbal behavior is what is the function? What is the effect on the environment? Now, when I teach verbal behavior, I always emphasize a few things. You want to know a few very important ideas. And if you can know these ideas, and if you know these ideas, verbal behavior questions become quite easy. The most important thing, one, is what evokes what type of verbal behavior. So, for instance, a mand. You all likely know what a mand is. It's a request or a demand, but it's important to know mands are evoked by motivating operations. That's going to, one, help you identify and distinguish when you're looking at a mand, and two, it's going to help you teach mands. Then a tact is a label or a description, so evoked by non-verbal stimuli, and that's also very important because it's going to help you discriminate or distinguish between tacts and, let's say, interverbals. Echoics, when we repeat sounds and words, these are evoked by verbal stimuli, and the interverbals are like conversations and questions. These are also evoked by verbal stimuli. So you want to always start with what is evoking these certain verbal behavior. And we've only listed four here because these are the four we're going to talk about teaching. In addition to what evokes these verbal behaviors, you want to know what reinforces them. And then you can ask, do they have point-to-point correspondence? And is there formal similarity? So for instance, with the echoics, you're going to have point-to-point correspondence and formal similarity. Whereas with interverbals, you're going to not have point-to-point correspondence. And so these ideas are going to help you answer questions about the different operants. Because you can ask yourself, okay, what is this evoked by? Does it have point-to-point correspondence? Is it formally similar? And answering those questions are going to help you discriminate between the different operants. So with that said, how are we going to teach each one of these four behaviors? Now, it's very important for teaching verbal behavior that you just think logically. Just in your head, how would you teach a mand? And you are likely going to follow the same steps we're about to cover. Because if you think about a mand is a request, it's a demand, and you're asking for something, right? You're asking for information, you're asking for items because you're motivated to gain those. So what you want to do with a mand is you want to identify motivators. Are they motivated by food? Are they motivated by social attention? What is your learner motivated by? When you figure out what they're motivated by, you can start contriving and using these motivating operations because motivating operations are what evokes mands. So if you know your client is motivated by attention, you can contrive that by withholding attention. And then when they want attention, they're going to have to start asking you for attention. When you know they're ready, then you can start prompting out the attention. So you might say, you've withheld it. You might say, if you want attention, say attention, and they're going to start saying it. And then you start fading out those prompts eventually to where only the motivating operation is evoking the behavior. You want to shape the mand to be socially valid. So we can communicate and request in a lot of different ways. So you just want the request to be valid socially. And then you want to expand the mand repertoire using multiple stimuli. So you want them to be able to make requests in different ways and request different items and different needs and different wants. And so you're basically teaching a mand like any other skill. You're going to pick a goal. You're going to pick how you're going to teach that goal. And then you start contriving the environment to where they're forced or they're motivated to engage in the behavior. You then shape it, reinforce it, and that's how we're teaching MANs. Now, on to tax. So, with a tact, this is a label, right? Or we're identifying something in our environment. So, tax are reinforced often through generalized condition reinforcers. This might be tokens, it might be social reinforcement. You always want to identify the reinforcers first, right? Because tax, you can use pretty much anything in the environment and have the person identify it or label it. And then you want to reinforce it. So with a tact, you're going to very similarly as a command start to manipulate the environment to where tacting comes into play. So a tact is evoked by a nonverbal stimulus, but you can prompt it out. So you can start with, let's say we're going to do a cookie. You can start by saying, what's this? Or this is a cookie, or label this, whatever you're going to do to get them to start identifying things in the environment. And then you fade as necessary to the point where they no longer need the verbal stimulus, and it's just the nonverbal stimulus evoking the tact. Again, when you break it down and keep it very simple, you're just teaching the skill like you would anything else. It's very specific to the tact or the mand, but it's just like every other skill we teach. You want to intertwine tact training into other teaching procedures because tacting is so easy to do all around your teaching environment. There are countless things you can start using to tact train. You want to encourage tacting across settings. So you want to encourage generalization. So we're not always tacting the same item in the same situation using the same environmental scenarios. You want to generalize tacts because that's going to help with social validity of the tacting, and also generalization, of course, is our goal. And then you want to teach stimulus discrimination by focusing on critical aspects of stimuli. So, for example, if you're trying to teach different vehicles, right? Let's say we have a car and we have a truck. And right now you taught them to tact vehicle and you want them to tact car versus truck. Well, you can focus on something like the truck bed, and that can be a critical aspect of the truck to where the client can now tact truck when they see the truck bed or car when there is no bed. And so you can start to expand your tact repertoire just like the man repertoire once they've gotten better at tacting. So if they can say vehicle, we can now identify specific vehicles. And again, as you go through tact training, you're going to want to reinforce these behaviors, and then you're going to want to prompt and fade as necessary. Now onto echoics. So echoics are when the learner repeats what is heard. And so again, you're going to want to reinforce with generalized condition reinforcers. So whatever that might be, you should be doing reinforcer assessments, obviously. You can model and prompt as necessary. So again, the echoic should be evoked by the verbal stimulus and have point to point. But if you're going to prompt and model, you can say repeat after me and other phrases to start teaching what an echoic is. You just want to fade it, right? And then you want to probe the client skill level to know to where to begin. So what do we mean by that? Well, if you're new to teaching echoics, you're just starting to teach echoics, you might not be able to get your learner to echo a full sentence, let's say. Maybe they only know a word, maybe a sound. That's where probing is going to come in. It's going to demonstrate to you where you can start. And so let's say they only know certain sounds and you want them to echo the word please. All they know is P. Well, you're going to start by probing out please, right? So you might say please. And if they say P, you might reinforce that. From there, you can then shape their ability. So you can go from P to pla to plea to please, just like any other skill. But you want to probe and know where to begin with the echoics. And then you can increase the complexity. So once they're echoing please, you can say, please hand me that towel, or please can I have some more? You can start increasing the complexity of echoes, which eventually should translate into more complex language for the learner. And then finally, interverbals. If you worked as an RBT, you probably have tried or done interverbals before. Typically, in a lot of ABA programs, these are things like animal sounds, the cow says blank, or items or functions. So you drink with a blank. And these are good ways to teach interverbals. Interverbals are typically conversational or question-based interactions. So you want to start simple where the learner may only need to fill in a single word or sound. So the example I just gave, the cow says, the learner would say moo, you drink out of a, learner would say cup. Very simple, one word, teaching them how interactions and conversation go. Obviously, we're going to prompt and fade as necessary. This is consistent across the board. You don't want to teach the same response to the same stimulus every time because that's not how communication works, right? Communication is often disjointed, it's often imperfect. So we can't just have them memorizing one response to the same stimulus every time. That's just not how generalization in real life works. To start, you can incorporate themes and concepts the learner already knows. So if the learner really likes sports, you might use football interverbals. You score a touchdown, you catch a pass. And it goes for anything. They might be into dolls or whatever they're into, right? You want stuff they're already familiar with because you're teaching them with an interverbal not to answer the question, right? The cow says moo. If they can answer that, that's fine, but it's not the point. The point of the communication training and the verbal behavior training is to teach them to use and engage in verbal behavior appropriately outside of the training environment. And then as you go, start to increase the number of exchanges in a row until you're actually having conversations and you're answering questions and they're communicating in a socially valid way. So that is teaching verbal behavior. Again, don't overcomplicate it. It's just like teaching other skills. You just want to think about what am I trying to accomplish? What is the verbal behavior I'm trying to see from my learner? And where do I begin? How can I prompt? How can I shape? How can I reinforce? And then how do I generalize? Please subscribe if you haven't already. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.